Hey, what's up everybody? I'm out here doing my bike ride chronicle right now with you. And today's topic, I want to talk about credit. So I had a conversation with my daughter yesterday about her wanting to understand about credit. And there's probably a lot of other kids out there that may not have someone that they can easily talk to that are 17, 18, 19, that are kind of thinking about it. So I want to at least try to share that information I provided her, and hopefully it may help out one of the youngsters out here that may not know about the basics of starting credit, especially if you're 18 or 19 and you are a student. So let me go ahead and, before I do that, let me just talk real quick about the shutdown. Man, it's over. So the shutdown is officially ended. The Senate came and they started the process. So they were, in their process, they were able to get the 60-40 vote, which is the majority they needed to be able to pass things down to the House so that they can vote and reconcile their bill. It's just all part of our process for getting things to, become a law. So, and I'll tell you, watching, looking on TikTok, man, there are so many people right now that are absolutely upset and furious on the blue team. So like I said, it was on Tuesday where everybody was taking the victory lap, and I was like, well, are we at the bottom part of the blue crest, the top of the blue crest, or the back end of the blue crest? Here, hang on.
Distance 1.0 miles, duration 7 minutes and 45 seconds.
Yeah, and I said, we don't know, we'll never know, but the victory lap celebration was short-lived. And so what's essentially happening right now, what it appears, is that there's a civil war going on inside of the blue team. And you have the ultra progressives, and you have maybe more of the moderate ones. And the party looks like it's trying to push more towards the progressive side. And anybody that stands in their way will get primaried and taken out. So, hey, it is what it is. The people are able to decide what they want. So if that's what ends up happening, that's the way our democracy works here in the States. But, and I forget the exact amount of days. It was either 43, 44, 45. This was a world record for the shutdown. I'm glad it's over with. And I'll tell you, I think what it was coming down to is, the main issue is the medical, extending the extra boost in the ACA contributions. That's one major sticking point. But I think what brought this to a head was, the holidays are right around the corner, and holiday travel starts really at the end of next week. And the airports right now, they are already suffering with long lines and people trying to get through the checkpoints, flight cancellations. So at one point there were more than 1,500 flights canceled in one day since the FAA mandate. Here, hang on, let me get through here. This spot here is always a challenge. All right, here we go. So the FAA mandated, flight cancellations. The airlines jumped in and complied. And a ton of folks working in TSA and air traffic control, they weren't going to work. That was causing additional flight delays. And so it was just a small precursor as to what was to come. So let me scoot over here real quick. And I'll tell you what, all holy hell was gonna break out here during the holiday. So that definitely was a major sticking point, because there's the issue with SNAP benefits, and a lot of local governments and people, and food banks have jumped in, as well as churches, to try to fill the need there. So that part would not hit as hard. And I'll tell you, talking about the churches, it was incredible to see, and I think everybody's seen it, the lady on TikTok that was calling around to different churches, mosques, synagogues, etc., trying to see if she can get some formula for her crying baby that she had an audio track playing for in the background that hadn't been fed since the night before. And only a small percentage of the Christian and Catholic and Protestant churches actually stepped up to do something immediately, but the majority of them didn't, so that caused a pretty big controversy. And I think everybody that was called, and I didn't watch all the videos, just talking about just what was summarized. And so pretty much all the mosques that were called, they all stepped in to help. So maybe it's a marketing opportunity, if things are played right. But like I said, I expressed no opinion, but I'm glad that part is over. And I know last Sunday we went to church. We go to it's almost like the pastor even called. He said, out of church sizes in the United States, the majority of them are at most, on average, about 65 members. And so the number of people that they have, number of services that they offer, he said they're essentially, here, hang on.
Distance 2.0 miles, duration 13 minutes and 5 seconds.
He said that their congregation was in the top 1% of church sizes. And if you put it that way, it makes a lot of sense. And so what they did was, of course, they didn't call them, but they jumped in and immediately started a fundraiser, and they were able to get 60,000 meals worth of revenue that people donated from within the congregation, outside the congregation, etc. And they, to the point where they're like, we don't really need any more money. We've got enough food to be able to give out to everybody. And then also too, for church service, there was a ton of food that the members of the congregation brought in, water, peanut butter, shelf-stable stuff, canned food. And it was nice to see the outpouring of support from the church at that level, at least the one out here in Richmond that we go to. So I was glad to definitely see that. And I'll tell you, I remember a long time ago when BART went on strike in the Bay Area, and I forget when this was. It was quite a while ago, probably at least 10 years. And I talked to my brother at the time, and leading up to the strike, management was just like, you know what? Funk the union, funk everybody. And they were going to break the union. And so contract talks kept coming. They kept, here, hang on a second. They would break down, and then finally it led no choice but the union to go on strike. And I told my brother, I said, hey, Fred, I said, man, brace for impact, dude. From what I've seen and the posturing that I've been seeing, management right now is out to break you guys, man. So be ready for the long haul. And I said, unless something cataclysmic happens, you know, it's gonna run out for a long time. So what ended up happening was, and you guys may remember this if you're from the Bay Area, there was 2 days into the strike, you know, management was operating the trains, and a lot of these guys that are in management, typically, you know, it's not anything any different just because it's BART, but they're not involved in the day-to-day stuff. So they were operating trains, trying to get them ready. And at the time, the whole Bay Area was just shut down. It was a poop show. The traffic was just crazy. You never really realized how many people rode BART. But so management was out practicing on the trains, you know, trying to get themselves ready to take over and run the trains and get the commuters back and forth. And there was another group of either workers or managers that were out on the track. And they're not familiar with all the signaling and all the other coordination stuff that's required. And the guy that was driving the train, he ended up hitting the guys on the track, and they were unalived. So it was catastrophic. It was all over the news. It was crazy. People were really sad and upset, and they're like, you should have never let management, you know, get out there and be driving these trains, because it's a specialized skill, and this is what we're trained to do. We can do it safely, which is all 100% true. All of it is 100% true. And and so after that, within 2 days, the strike was over. The employees got exactly what they were looking for, and management had to save face. And since that incident, I don't know if BART has come back up for their contract renegotiation. They may have at least one time. Everything went through. Management took their foot off everybody's neck. And that's what I was worried about. Here, hang on a second. So that's what I was worried about that might end up happening out here during this shutdown. That there was going to be something cataclysmic that was going to happen. So we all saw what happened with the UPS plane, and I was talking to my daughter about that, and I was telling her what my theory was. And she said, well, what about the UPS? I said, you know what? That was a maintenance issue, and that is not cataclysmic. That's not enough to be able to end this whole shutdown. But I'm thankful that there wasn't some major calamity where planes collided and families of innocent passengers and crew were all, you know, gone. I'm just so happy that that didn't end up happening. So, and here we are. So I just want to say I'm happy that everything is over, and I know that there's a lot of people out right now that were ready to ride this thing to the ground. And I get it, and I understand. And, you know, if this was a very, very strong negotiating point, and a lot of people could have been hurt way more than what already has happened. So like I said, I'm thankful that everything is done, and the blue team seems to be rallying on the progressive side right now, and they've got their they've identified folks that haven't been supportive, and they're organizing and going to do what they're allowed to do, which is vote people out of office. So that's our democratic process. So I just want to say I'm happy that everything is over, and I'm happy that there was nothing that happened on a cataclysmic level to any people that have been involved. And like I said, still continue to brace for impacts, because out here on these streets right now, it is absolutely going to be rough. And so take care of yourself always first, and take care of those around you next. And then, of course, you know, brace for impact. Here, hang on a second.
Distance 3.0 miles. Duration 20 minutes and 35 seconds.
All right, so that's enough of that. And so let me go ahead and jump in real quick and talk about the credit topic. So I was telling my wife about this, and she says, you know what? There are plenty of other kids out there that may not know, that may not have somebody that they can call. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean you got a dad or a mom, or you do or you don't. It's just that somebody that may not be very much versed in these things. So how did this all happen? So my daughter, she's turning 19, and in a few days on the 21st, which I'm really proud of her. She's down there living her best life and studying cinematography. She's working on campus, and she just recently got invited to be on 2 movie sets for 2 films, and to be a production assistant. So she's getting, you know, because of the work that she's been doing with her filming and editing, people are tapping her on the shoulder. And I said, you know, this is what it's all about. You gotta build a reputation for yourself. So she has no credit card. She has a bank account. And of course she's got an ATM Visa card. And she does have, I gave her a, hang on a second. So I gave her a, not me, but my company, she's on my advisory board. So she has an American Express card from my company that occasionally I allow her to use if she has, you know, expenses that are related to the business. So, and like I said, she has no credit on her own. So she's at work, and some of the kids that are there, they are talking, and they're talking about credit cards. And one kid was like, yeah, you know, you can get a secure credit card, start building credit that way. We should kind of do it as soon as we can. Another person was like, what is credit? How does it all work? I don't know, I don't get it. And what should I do? And so my daughter was listening to them while they were talking, and she texted me later on, or at some point when she had heard this conversation. She says, hey, I want to talk to you about a credit and a credit card. And so I was like, for what? For you to get a credit card? She said, yeah, for me to get a credit card. I said, okay. I said, call now. Operators are standing by. And she said, well, I'll call you later because I'm at work, and you know, I don't have the time to be able to talk to you about this in detail. So, okay, cool. So she calls me maybe 3 hours later, you know, and I was sitting at the table, and me and Marilyn were eating or doing something. And I was like, man, my daughter reached out to me to ask about credit. I said, I'm so glad that she feels comfortable enough to ask me about stuff. And she says, well, I don't see why you're so surprised, because, you know, who else would she talk to? And I said, yeah, I know, but, you know, I'm just happy because so many parents have kids, and when it comes time for them to do something adultish, they don't reach out. So I was just really happy in the blessing of knowing that she felt comfortable enough to reach out to me, for me to advise her, and that would be enough for her to be able to make a decision, and she can trust my thoughts and my opinion. Fantastic. So she calls me, like I said, we're talking on the phone, and I'm like, hey, I said, so what brought all this on? So she explained this thing I just said to you guys about how some of the kids were talking about credit. And so I talked to her and I explained it to her. I said, well, just so you guys know, I said, there's 3 ways you can have credit. I said, you can have a credit card, you can have a charge card, or you can have a secure card. So she didn't know what they were. And I explained it to her. I said, well, a secure card is you take some of your own money, like maybe $500, you put it in a savings account, and then they turn around and give you all of it or maybe half of it as ability for you to be able to charge. And I said, the way credit works is like right now, when you go to the store, you use your ATM card, you buy some groceries or whatever, that money is immediately gone out of your account. But when you have a credit card or a charge card or a secured card, there's an expectation that you will pay it back. And you typically have a window of about 30 days where you can charge. So let's just say January 1st through January 31st. Here, hang on a second.
Distance 4.0 miles, duration 26 minutes and 47 seconds.
I said, so okay, January 31st is when the cycle ends. Then they give you like another 21 days afterwards to pay it back. And then when the next month closes, they send you a bill. So it's a whole cycle. I said, if you charge something and you turn around and pay it when the bill comes, I said, there's no interest. So she's like, well, what's interest? I said, well, most of the credit cards, the interest rate is about 30%. So if you have $1,000 that's charged on your card, here, hang on a second, I'm gonna go downhill here. If you got $1,000 charged on your card, keep things simple. If you have a 30% interest rate, which most credit cards are, they want you to pay them back at another $300. So you just take 1,000, multiply it by the rate, which is 30%, and then that's how much you got to pay back. $1,300. So 1,000 for the original, plus 300 for the interest. And she's like, okay, I get that. It makes sense. And I said, so if you want to overpay for stuff and pay more than what you should be paying, then that's when you are running interest. And I said, in your situation, you want to just run your card once a month, maybe for something like Netflix or some other thing that you need, and then just turn around and have it on auto payment and have it pay off. So it's going to build up a credit score for you. So she was like, well, what's a credit score and how that works? I think they were talking about that. I said, well, let me finish explaining about the card. So you got the secured card, you got the credit card, and I said, then you have a charge card where you can charge it after 30 days, it sends you a bill, you got 21 days to pay it, but you have to pay it by the due date. So essentially, if you buy something on the 1st of January, you got roughly 7 weeks to pay it back. You can't have any interest. They want all their money back. They just gave you the privilege of being able to charge it temporarily and pay it back. And a lot of times you'll find charge cards associated with reward cards, and I explain how that all works. So, most cards, a lot of them these days, they have some cashback benefit, or they give you rewards, or they give you discounts, whatever it might be. And a lot of those kind of cards like that, they give you the ability to get some rewards, which is nice. So here, let me get through this down here. Let me get over here. Hang on a second. I think that's one of the new Jags. All right, is that a Bentley? I think that's a Bentley right there. All right, pretty cool. So that's how those work. And I said, your credit score, you probably really have no credit score. And so I explained how a credit score works. And essentially, if you pay your bill on time, I told her, I said, a credit score floats up like a feather, very, very slow, but it falls like a rock. And so what ends up happening is if you have a balance, you don't pay it off, and you have, let's say they give you a $1,000 limit and you charged up $900 of it and you don't pay it off, well, they kind of see that you're not paying your bill and you've used up most of the balance, so you're a little bit more risky. And so I said, if you do carry a balance, you want to keep it as low as possible. It won't affect your credit score. And I said, every time you apply for credit, it's a ding against your credit score, it pulls it down. If you don't make a payment, it pulls it down. You know, so I said, anything that you do that's negative, there's consequences that goes against your credit score. And so I said, you want to basically use the card, pay for it every month, and then you're good. And then, so she's like, well, what I've heard that if you have a balance, sometimes it makes your score go down also too. I said, well, what happens is, you know, it's whenever your bank closes its billing cycle. I said, whenever they close their billing cycle, thanks. I said, what happens is they close their billing cycle, and whatever your balance is on that date is what they're going to report. So even if you turn around and pay it off, let's say you charge your card up to $900, you pay it immediately when you get the bill, they're going to see that your balance is $900, and that affects your credit score. So I said, you can make more than one payment. You don't have to wait until the day that your balance is due. You can pay it. But I said, in your case right now, it might be worth it just to, you know, have a small bill get charged $25, $50 a month or whatever, and then let that hit your credit report, and then turn around and pay it off, because it's a small amount and it'll help increase your credit score. So she's like, okay, I get that. Okay, it makes sense. So she was like, well, at this point, what is a good card for me to get? So she starts sharing her screen with me, and I said, well, you're probably best to get yourself a student card. And she's like, well, I said, yeah. So I said, I don't know if things are different now, especially in California, but when I was going to college, they always had a table out in the quad where they had student deals, and they would turn around and ask students to sign up. You get a t-shirt or a gift card to Chili's or something like that. And that's how you kind of started your credit. She said, well, they don't have that. She said, we do have US Bank, and that's what she uses. And I said, oh, okay, so then go to US Bank and ask them about the card. Here, hang on a second.
Distance 5.0 miles, duration 33 minutes and 39 seconds.
I said, well, just go to the school and to the bank on campus and ask them if they have any student credit cards. They probably have some type of a deal or something with the school. And so she was like, yeah, well, that was something she was considering. So, and then she said, well, what would be a good card? What about, so she started Googling different credit cards. I said, well, if you're gonna Google a student credit card. And so, and I talked to her also about, here, hang on. So I said, Google all the credit cards, just Google the best student credit card, ask, Google AI, whatever theirs is, and see what they say. And so they brought up a list of the top 5 cards, eventually after we were just kind of poking around on the web. So one of the ones that she saw was the Capital One, I think it was a Savoy card. So we were talking about the different rewards, and I said, most likely your rate will be 30%. There's nothing you can do about that right now. And I said, I explained the rewards, how they work, so if you go to a grocery store, you might get 3% back. If you go to a restaurant, you might get 2% back. So I said, out of all the cards that are available and what they offer you as a reward, this probably mimics the most and the best for what you're going to find that you're going to need for a student. And so, like I said, then we looked online and used Google AI and it came up with a top 5 list of best cards for students. And I think the second or third one was the Capital One Savoy. And so we went to the Capital One website, and they had a thing there where you can look at the different cards that they had. And we looked at the Savoy one, it was cool. And it had a thing on there where you can get pre-approved. And I said, well, go ahead and do that and see what it says. And so she went ahead and filled out the pre-approval application, and I helped her answer the questions about income and rent and all that kind of stuff. And then it went through and thought about it for a minute, and it says, okay, you're pre-approved. And it said you're pre-approved for these 3 or 4 cards that they offer through Capital One, and one of them was a Savoy card. So we looked at all the different options that they offered, and the different variations on rewards and all that. And so based on all that, the Savoy worked, and there was a button underneath the Savoy option, and it said click to complete. And that's what she did. She selected the Savoy option, and after another couple seconds of it thinking, it came back and she was approved for a credit card for $500. So I was like, congratulations. I said, how do you feel? She said, oh, okay, well, now I have, adult responsibilities, adult problems. So it's only beginning. But I said, congratulations, this is a magical moment. I said, you got all the basic tools. And the thing I really liked about it is as she was going through, clicking through the different things, she was taking the time to glance at the terms and conditions, and she was asking me questions about the different things that they were going to charge her for. And I was telling her, I said, if you're ever late on and you miss a payment, I said, what's going to end up happening is they're going to probably charge you $35. And so as we were looking through the terms and conditions, it came back that the rate you're going to have to pay is $40 for missing a payment. So I was like, yeah, so make sure you set up the auto pay. So she got that all taken care of. She downloaded the app and got her credit card thing all set up. And then she ended up going in and setting up her bank account to do automatic payments. And she chose her billing day. And that's it. Here, hang on. My daughter now has her very first credit card. So, and I said, hey, with awesome responsibilities comes awesome duties. So just be careful. And if there's any questions you have along the way, feel free to reach out and talk to me about it. But, I know you're going to do well here. And so she was like, well, I'm going to keep the card. And then when I graduate, I'm going to cancel it and get some. I said, no, you don't cancel it. I said, one of the things in the credit score is longevity of credit. So this is going to be your first credit card you'll ever have, and you don't want to close it because it's going to mess your credit score up, because the amount of credit that you have, the age of it, is going to diminish. So you're pretty much, bonded to this card for the long haul, and just leave it be. And I said, if there's anything you're thinking about doing, or just reach out to me, I'll give you the information and you could make your own decision on it. So in the end, like I said, I wanted to share this information with other folks out there, students that don't have someone that they can talk to easily about, credit and all that and what to do. And so this is just a conversation that I had with my daughter. Hopefully you guys, find some use here, and it all works out. So, but in the end, I'm very much a proud father and extremely happy that my daughter reaches out to me quite often. How you doing? Yeah, she reaches out to me quite often about situations. And I talk to her, give her my opinion, and check in with her later on at some point and see how it all played out. And I think that's every parent's dream. So there's some parents that are hovering and helicopterish and They want to be involved in everything that their child is doing. Here, hang on a second, I'm going upstairs. And, you know, when we were separated for about 3 years, and then when we became, and when I moved and I reached out to her, and she said she wanted to have me back in her life, the one thing that she said is, she says, I'm not necessarily looking for you to be a father to me, you know. And I said, no, I'm not trying to do that. I said, all I want to do is to share my knowledge and information with you so you can not make the same mistakes that I did. So, and when she does reach out to me about something, it warms my heart, it makes me feel really good. And I'm extremely happy and proud of her for the person that she's becoming. And she is on target right now to graduate in 2018, exactly 4 years. So she's getting all of her classes. She's, hang on.
Distance 6.0 miles, duration 41 minutes and 39 seconds.
So she's getting all of her classes. She's doing extremely well. And I don't think any parent can be prouder. So, like I said, I'm gonna continue to do these little videos over time as she asks me questions, and it's something that some of the other youth out here, and even some of the adults that can benefit from this, want you guys to be able to have the knowledge, the information. Oh, check that out, that's a big ass crane. I want you guys to be able to have the knowledge, the information, and the game to make the best decision. So I'm down here, coming up on the James River in a few minutes, and the sun will be going down soon. So I'm very happy I got out here and got on this ride. I wanted to do it earlier in the morning, but I had to work and I had stuff to do. And then what I've been doing over like the last 4 days or so, really since the weekend, I've been working on our bikes. So I did a complete overhaul. I replaced my wife's tires, front and back, as well as her inner tubes, and adjusted all the derailleurs front and back. She was only getting one derailleur movement in the front instead of 3. And I'll tell you, adjusting a derailleur in the front of a bike is like dark science. So I watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos and a whole lot of trial and error. And in the end, I got close, and then somehow it all fell into place. And so we're good to go. And then I turned around and normally what I do, like last time, in the wintertime it got cold, I didn't ride. I want to still try to continue to ride as long as possible this season. And I wouldn't have been riding this time last year because it would have been too cold. But I'm bundling up, and I replaced my tires so that I have a better tread. I think the other ones I had were getting bald and turning almost into racing slicks. So if I need to ride in the rain or whatever, I'll have the ability to be able to do that. So that's where we are. And thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate it. And so take the time to like and subscribe to this. Hey, what's going on? Be sure to like and subscribe and follow me. And I'll be back soon with the next topic. All right, guys, peace. I tell you, it is beautiful out here with the trees. So looks like they're about ready to have, oh, they got the marathon coming up this weekend. So that's what all this stuff is for out here. Well, got a ton of supplies. But yeah, the Richmond Marathon is this weekend. So definitely exciting. All right, pull over here. Got to go to the little boys' room.